Bainbridge Asylum is looking to hire a new director. Applicants beware. Part 4. Part 1 link, Part 2 link, Part 3 link, Part 4 final link. Patient Bethany Stalwart. Wait. Are you recording this? I don't think I can do this. You probably won't believe me anyway. And if the director gets wind of this, he's just been itching for a reason to send me to the experimental ward. I'm getting better. I swear. What? The director has resigned. That can't be right, really. You're looking for a new one. Then maybe there's hope after all. You promise this isn't some kind of trick? Okay then. I'll tell you what really happened to put me here. My name is Bethany Stalwart. I used to work here at Bainbridge Asylum as a nurse in the emergency surgery ward. I mostly worked day shifts because I enjoyed a pretty healthy nightlife. But I usually worked a few night shifts a month just to mix things up a bit. As you might imagine, the day shift here is often really busy. Things are a lot quieter at night. Though you do have the odd emergency here and there. Like that weird girl. Alicia, what's her face? I was here working the night that witch bitch nearly bled herself out. Honestly. I've never understood why crazy murderers shouldn't be allowed to off themselves. They'd be doing everyone else a favor. Right. Anyway. I was working a night shift on the ES ward. Chatting it up with my friend Samantha to pass the time more easily. You want to know all the juiciest news about what's going on around Bainbridge? You talk to Samantha. If you want to know the truest versions of what's going on, well, maybe she's not the one to ask. But she can make the night breeze by before you know it. I miss working with her. I can only imagine what she's telling everyone about me. Though, not to be mean, but I really wish it could have been her instead. The whole thing came down to a coin toss and I lost. See, earlier that night, we lost a patient that was rushed over to us from the C ward. According to the guards on duty, the guy had jumped from his bed and had somehow landed awkwardly enough to have broken his neck. Now, I don't know if you've seen the beds over on the C ward, but those things are no more than glorified mattresses. You tell me somebody jumps off of one of those and lands hard enough to break his freaking neck. I call bullshit. But that's the story they decided to stick with, and it was really none of my business if the guards played a little too rough with some of these murderous kooks. Anyway, the guy didn't last too much longer after he arrived at the ES. Our doctor pronounced him dead and we covered him up with a sheet and moved his body over to a corner where he wouldn't be in the way. Crude. I know. But the morgue wasn't open to us at night. One of the weird rules of this place. Though I think I might be starting to understand that one. So, closed to 3 in the morning. Sarah came up to the intake desk where me and Samantha were sitting. Sarah and another nurse, Charlene, had been watching over the patients in the main recovery room. Sarah needed a cigarette break and she asked if one of us could go sit with Charlene until she got back. No biggie. But me and Samantha were both feeling kind of lazy at that moment. So we decided to flip a coin. It was just my bad luck that the coin chose to send me to take Sarah's place that night. Any other freaking night. And you might be here talking to Sarah or Samantha, while I'd be working my day shift on the ES and looking forward to another wild night out. As it was, after the coin toss, I grabbed my book of Sudoku puzzles and a pencil, and went to join Charlene in recovery. I mean, Charlene was a nice girl and all, but talking to her was about the same as talking to an old, dusty librarian. She had no social life to speak of and didn't have more than 2 words to say in response to anything you would say. Boring. I don't know how Sarah managed to work so many shifts paired up with her. It drove me crazy having to spend 10 minutes with her. I don't really mean to speak ill of the dead. And I certainly didn't want her to die. I just wish that she could have died on a different night or that someone else had discovered her. As it was, when I walked into the recovery room, I found Charlene convulsing face down in a pool of her own blood. just a few feet away from the entrance to the room. I almost cried out, should have cried out, but I guess I was shocked into silence. I was thinking, like, did Sarah do this? Did she finally snap after getting stuck with Charlene for so many shifts? What if she comes back to take me out? What if she already got Samantha while I was on my way here? Yeah. My panicked thoughts caused me to waste a few precious seconds just standing there like an idiot. But finally, my training kicked in and I rushed forward to see what kind of trouble Charlene was in and what I could do to help. It was after I knelt down next to her that I caught movement to the right of me. I turned and looked up to see the patient that had died earlier, standing next to the nearest patient bed and staring at me. I mean, his eyes still had that dead glaze to them, but he was definitely looking at me. He stood straight up except that his head was still awkwardly cocked to the side and the skin of his neck looked like it didn't fit right. His jaw was hanging open and his fat, bluish tongue was poking out, dry and dead. He lifted his left hand to his mouth with his pointer finger lifted, like he was trying to shush me. Then he lifted his right hand, showing me his scalpel before slicing it down into the throat of the recovering patient he stood next to. I choked off a scream in my own throat. And I mean I swallowed it hard. When the dead guy, James something or other, shuffled toward me holding that scalpel. Then I watched as he went over to the next patient bed and did it again. I wanted to scream so bad every time he went to stab a patient. But I didn't dare make a sound because he was watching me the whole time with his finger held up to his mouth. I was so scared and I did not want to die there in that room with a monster. I mean, I'm sure all those patients didn't want to die either. But they were all murderers, so they kind of deserved it. There were 11 patients recovering in that room, and not one was spared. It wasn't until the dead guy had killed the last patient that I realized I was the only target left in the room. I had hoped that he would go away and leave me alone after he was done butchering everyone else. I had been quiet and let him do his thing, after all. But once he was done with the last patient, he held up that terrible scalpel and came shuffling toward me. I suddenly didn't want to be alone anymore. And I mean, I don't think I've ever been so alone in my life. I lifted Charlene up and hugged her tightly to me. I knew she was dead at this point, but I needed to hold her anyway. And then, with the dead man almost right on top of me, I shut my eyes and screamed like my life depended on it. That's how the other nurses found me, just sitting on the floor, holding a dead nurse, and screaming my face off. Apparently, I put up quite a fight and wouldn't let anyone touch me until they had found a way to sedate me. I mean, I was fully riled up, thinking I was about to die. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody or anything like that, I was just trying to live. But that's not how everyone else saw it. Nobody saw any of that night's events my way. That's why I'm a patient here now. Of course, they all think I lost my marbles and killed all those people myself that night. I mean, I was a victim. I didn't kill anybody at any time. But they all want to say that there is no other logical explanation of what happened. According to all the staff present, and even according to video footage, there had been a temporary power outage affecting the ES ward. Get this, it's supposed to have started as I was on my way to the recovery room. Now, I know I didn't go wandering around anywhere in the dark that night. I could see everything the whole time. The lights around me never so much as flickered, let alone turned completely off. And yet the security footage absolutely showed that everything went black in the recovery room just before the horror show began. I mean, all of the lights, the monitors, everything turned off. For some reason, even the backup power supply remained off during that time. Charlene, of course, was still alive and unharmed when everything went dark. And when everything abruptly came back on, all there was to see was me surrounded by dead patients and holding a dead nurse, screaming like my hair was on fire. The dead guy was found exactly where we had placed him, still covered with sheet. So, that's it. I'm supposed to have walked into the recovery room that night, under the cover of darkness, and stabbed a bunch of patients and a nurse to death. Me. With my secret night vision goggles. I mean, how was I supposed to see well enough to have killed all those people with such precision? The doctors all want to tell me that it's more plausible than a dead guy getting up and killing everyone, without getting a drop of blood on him, and going back to rest exactly as he was before so no one would notice. Well, I beg to differ. I know what I saw. And I know that I don't belong here. Please. Tell the next director what I told you. Tell him that this is not justice and that I am not crazy. I can't stay here. The most frightful things happen here all the time now. I mean, working here for a shift is so different from being here 24/7. I get to witness a lot more of the action now. It's like this place just up and soaked up all the crazy from the patients living in this damned asylum. The new director needs to know this. He needs to know that this place isn't normal. And he has to let me out. Please.